Welcome to this edition of Represent NYC on Manhattan Neighborhood Network. I'm Gale Brewer, Manhattan Borough President, and our topic today is participation on Manhattan's 12 community boards. Community boards are the volunteer voice of our city's neighborhoods, responsible for issues ranging from real estate development to liquor licenses and many more issues. This is a time of year when my office begins the appointment or reappointment process for 300 community board membership slots, and the deadline for applying is January 30, 2015. Any New Yorker can apply to become a community board member. You must live, work, or go to school in his jurisdiction and submit an application. And this year, the law has changed at my urging, and New York's 16 and 17-year-olds are now allowed to apply. You can find out which community board district you live or work in and apply online at manhattanbp.nyc.gov/communityboards. Joining a community board is public service at its best. And our guests today are members of two of Manhattan's community boards. Nilsa Arama of Community Board 11, which begins at 96th Street and 5th Avenue and extends eastward to the East River and northward to the Harlem River, encompassing the northernmost part of the Upper East Side and East Harlem. Also with us is Brian Benjamin of Community Board 10, which begins at Central Park North, or 110th Street, and heads north to the Harlem River as well, bordered by St. Nicholas Avenue on the west and 5th Avenue on the east. Thank you both for being here today. I'm very excited.
Thank you.
So Brian, let's start with you.
Sure.
And talk about your role, the committee, and what you do, and some of the issues that you deal with on Community Board 10, and then we'll hear about Community Board 11.
Sure. Well, I joined the Community Board 3 years ago, and in that time, I've been involved in a range of activity on the board. Presently, I'm the chair of land use for Community Board 10. I'm also the second vice chair of the board, so I'm in the leadership of the board, and I also serve on the education committee. We deal with a range of issues, as was mentioned earlier. As the chair of land use, I deal a lot with the zoning issues, ULURP issues, any sort of real estate activity in the district that requires city action comes through our committee, and there's a ULURP process that we engage in. And it's been a great experience because I was saying earlier before we started that I'm a developer by trade, a real affordable housing developer, and I live in Harlem and build in Harlem, but I've lived in like this kind of vacuum of just doing what I do, but being on the community board, I get to see so many different issues that impact the community, and also able to engage with our elected officials and our community activists on trying to make Harlem better, so it's exciting.
I've seen you in action, so I appreciate it. Nilsa, tell us about Board 11 and what you do.
Well, I'm a newly appointed board member. I was appointed in April. I'm there for a one-year term. I am part of the Housing Committee and the Youth and Education Committee. And as part of those committees, I was really excited for the 16 and 17-year-old change because I, more than anyone, believe that 16 and 17-year-olds have to be part of a Youth and Education Committee. It's important that we all understand what they're going through, both at school, in the neighborhood, at home. We listen to many different situations that come up. Right now, one of our concerns that we are thinking and trying to tackle is bullying in our community, both in education, in an educational setting as well. In the Housing Committee, we have a lot of community residents come and talk to us about the problems that they're having at their units, how we can help them, how we can do referrals. So it's really a grassroots kind of way to assist your community, to get to know others in your community, find out what your strengths are, what you should be learning. So it's been a great learning experience so far.
I appreciate both of you. I was on my community board before being elected to the city council 13 years ago now. And I think the hardest part is the planning part because it used to be called community planning boards. And so in your roles, how do you feel that the community board could take that even on a further step? Because the planning is hard. You have to work to figure out an individual developer comes or somebody comes with a problem, and then you have to figure, okay, how are we going to do this on a more systemic basis?
Sure.
So how do you go about trying to think about the planning aspect?
Sure. I think the first place is to start with the district needs statement. And, really strong community boards really spend the time necessary to put your district needs statement in order, have every committee work on that, and really come up with, okay, here are the issues we have. And tied to that should be community forums, so that it's not just the folks in the community board in a vacuum deciding what the district needs are. It's the community feeding into the community board, determining the district needs. Once you have the district needs, then you move into, okay, well, here are some of the things we as a committee, of different committees, and as a board, obviously, should be working on over the year to try to solve. Like, one of the issues that have come up in our committee is affordable housing is such a big issue.
Both areas.
Such a big issue. And what we recognized was we want to advocate for more affordable housing, but within the present rules right now, Community Board 10, for any new developments in our district, we have a 50% preference. Now, what we've been finding is that 50% preference has not turned into 50% of people from the district.
Exactly.
And so what we have decided to do as a committee and then as a board generally is to really focus on, okay, let's bring in the person from HPD who does the lotteries, and we're going to really spend the next year really trying to get those numbers up, deal with the issues, whether it's credit, et cetera, et cetera.
And I assume the 50% doesn't materialize because the kind of housing that's being built is perhaps too high income for the individuals. Is it even when it's an 80-20, or is it a different problem?
No, it's a different problem. So on any affordable opportunity, let's say it's 60% AMI, right? 50% of those should be a preference to our Community Board 10, but that preference is not in stone, it's not a requirement. So what happens is the property manager, et cetera, will say, oh, well, okay, these are the amount of people who applied, these amount of people from Community Board 10, and then that.
So it's not mandated.
It's not mandated.
Got it.
So what we got to do is focus on trying to be be of assistance to try to drive that number closer to what it should be.
That's a good function for the community board, because only you would know that was a city, like a borough community-wide issue.
Exactly.
Yeah. I assume affordable housing is an issue in East Harlem.
It's a very big issue. With the advent of a lot of new developments, mostly geared towards co-ops or even affordable housing, but on the higher end, we're finding that a lot of people are feeling that they're going to be displaced because they can't afford even the minimum of what is considered affordable housing. What's affordable housing to me may not be affordable housing to you. There are many different changes. I agree with Brian. As a community board, we were talking about the fact that we have to get the word, especially in housing, and the fact that also different committees should work more closely together. So for instance, if land use is getting a whole bunch of different developments that they need to look at and revise and issue permits for, housing seems to be, the housing committee should work hand in hand, because it'll be almost like the second step, because you're the first step, land use, and then eventually housing will be the second step. And that's one of the things that I think in Community Board 11, we're working toward tying committees that are independent,
like
but also
two silos.
Exactly.
That's
so
right.
they're independent, but eventually will come together, and it will be more representative of the issue.
And the other issue is jobs, and how you
Absolutely.
tie the jobs to any new development. I know East Harlem recently, I went to a forum where there is a new job center in East Harlem, and an attempt to do that. And I think when the center was built over at 116th Street, there was a pretty good tie into the jobs. And one of the problems is you might do it initially in a new development, but there's no follow-up.
That's right.
To find out,
Yes.
okay, so there's a new job here. Maybe somebody from East Harlem or West Harlem or Central Harlem should be getting that job, but nobody's following up.
And some of that is
That's a
tied to
problem.
workforce training, which is economic development issue, which is, okay, because developers will say, well, we would hire folks, but they don't have this training or that training, what have you. So if we know that there are developments coming up, we should make sure there's a pipeline of training that then gets plugged right into these opportunities. I mean, so that speaks to your planning, which is okay. And there's another planning issue.
This is back to no silos.
There's another planning issue, which is, okay, what should our community look like? Okay, so
Exactly.
okay, what should we say maybe from this block to this block, maybe we should encourage these kind of developments from this block to this block. Maybe we should encourage these. I mean, these are the kinds of things, obviously working in conjunction with our borough president and city planning, et cetera. But I think that's something that we should be taking on as well.
Well, that's the issue of up zoning, down zoning, and what kind of zoning.
Exactly.
And I know that in Ward 11, for instance, it's going to be targeted for up zoning.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if it's good, I don't know if it's bad.
I'm not
But
quite
I'm
sure
just saying
either.
that's the kind of work that would require no silos and all hands on
Absolutely.
deck.
All hands on deck.
Absolutely.
To try to, A, educate people as to what they're going to be discussing, and B, figure out the best solution.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because when the mayor's suggestion, of course, is upzoning means more affordable housing.
Correct.
But it could also mean a lot of high-income housing, because
Right.
who's going to pay for the low-income housing?
Absolutely.
Right.
Is it self-financed, or is it something that includes some kind of subsidy? Because the federal government is not in the business anymore, and so we're really
That's
much
exactly
on
right.
our own.
Exactly.
So these are really hard times in terms of affordable housing.
But tied to that, you know, when the mayor says we want 200,000 new units of affordable housing, what's affordable? I mean, we had
Exactly.
hearings and conversations. Our Assemblyman Keith Wright, others, we've been talking about this issue. AMI, area median income. How's it determined? Should it be determined that way? So I think when we say affordable housing, that has its own issues tied to it.
Absolutely.
Separate and apart from luxury housing.
Correct.
And so we have city dollars that are subsidizing quote unquote affordable housing. Well, is it affordable
To the people who live in the neighborhood.
who live in the neighborhood?
Exactly.
And that's back to you, what do you want your neighborhood to look like?
Exactly.
Correct.
So, but you know, these are tough issues. I think the other concern I have is how do you plan for open space? That's another part of planning.
That's another issue.
And
That's
you know,
right.
there isn't a lot of open space. You know, you've got Central Park is very much south of the two
Right.
communities.
That's right.
And so how do you, like when you do developments, you have to think about open space. When you do zoning, you have to think about open space. I don't know what committee works on that. Do you have
That would fall under land use because typically the open space is tied to development related
And also
activity.
parks, so I would
and
think also
parks.
parks,
Parks and
Depend-
recreation.
Yes,
also.
yes,
Yeah.
it should. Yes, and I think
At
yes.
least, you know, on
Right.
the
You're absolutely
the
right.
back end, you
Right.
know, I mean, because it's just, we have a very
point.
active parks committee, and it's chaired by Frances Mastroda, and I happen to be able to go to one of her meetings, and she's very passionate about open space and
That's a
the
good
parks
point.
and everything. She's been really great, and so that speaks also to the strength of the committees. If you have a really strong committee, you can really keep on top of the issues
That's
and be
right.
out there and be the face at different activities and encourage. There's a lot of things going on at Thomas Jefferson Park that's for the positive now, and that's through to her leads and what she's been doing and bringing in community partners. So it's a really, really strong committee that is really concerned about open space as well and maintaining what we have.
Because the mayor also announced several parks, I think in some of your community districts that are going to have extra funding. And now the question is to get input as to what that funding should pay for.
That's
Exactly.
absolutely right.
So then again, this is having a strong committee, and that's something that new committee members or people who are applying to the board should look at, to join committees that have strong chairs or you know, have partnerships that they've already established so they can be part of something that's moving in the right direction.
And I know on our board, if you come on the board, which is why it's so great that you're doing all this outreach, when you come on the board with a certain strong skill set, well, we'll put you, you know, we'll put you right in charge really quickly.
Absolutely.
And you know, so that's another good thing about a community board is that, at least in ours, I'm not sure how yours works, it's not a very top-down structure. So, you know, information and talent, like I, in a very short period of time, have become a leader on the board, partially because I actually understand development and land use.
Right.
And
You have that skill set.
I originally said I didn't want to be on land use because I didn't want there to be some opinion, oh, well, wait a minute, he's a developer, he's on land use. But I got asked to be on land use because folks was like, you understand this and we know you care and we, you know, help us figure out how we deal with
You
this.
speak
and
the
so.
language that's
Right.
needed. Not everyone does, and that's important. You know, you need that balance between the seasoned community board members and the new members and the ones that are in the middle, so that you can sort of give your skills to someone else who may not be that strong in that skill set.
But might have other expertise in terms of being a parent or having something,
Absolutely.
you know, have some background that would be helpful as a community member.
Can I say something really quickly? Because one of the things that we have, it's all about who's on the board. Because you made this point, it was such a powerful point about, you know, depending on the committee chairs, that could determine how everything works. And I think, you know, when we're bringing on, trying to get new members, we should try to get people who are active, who are interested, who commit, you know, who will, because this is a volunteer position. No one's being paid.
Exactly.
And so it's all about your passion and your love for the community. And so
that's another question would be, what kind of expertise do you think people should bring to the board, or what might be missing? And second, you know, we've been doing a lot of trainings in the Borough President's office.
Yes, you have.
Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering, we've been talking about, you know, parliamentarian, Robert's rules, land use, diversity, and I'm just wondering, what kind of skill sets do you think boards need in addition to what is available, and other kinds of trainings that you think should be available?
Well, I've been fortunate enough as a new member to go to all of your trainings.
Oh, you're wonderful.
Other than the Teen 16, because I had a schedule conflict, but I really wanted to go to that and I did.
There'll be more.
Yeah. So I think having a passion for your community is first and foremost.
Yeah.
You need to want to, you know, you need to want to devote time, and you need to have a keen sense of observation. You need to observe the changes in your neighborhood, what you're seeing, what's going on. You need to talk to your neighbors. But I think first and foremost, you want to help. And once you want to do that, your skill sets will follow. You know, I have a master's in business. I know Microsoft Office. I haven't had to use those skills other than, you know, giving my opinion and reading things. And so it depends on your committee, I think. It depends on your passion for learning.
Yep.
Because I think that's important. You have to want to learn. I think that there should be an analysis on each community board of the skill sets that are lacking.
Right.
Yes.
Yes, that's what we're working on.
I agree with that.
And I think that then should be targeted.
Yep.
And I think that the community boards, the administration, the chairs and the district managers should actually in-depth know what each community board's strengths and weaknesses are, because then that will speak to the kind of trainings. I think time management is key. I think also time management is key. I think that also having the chairs of each committee have to do their trainings as well, that it shouldn't be volunteer. If you're chairing a committee, you should have to go through the same types of trainings, maybe on a different level, so that you're also held accountable.
Right, and that will help you with time management
Absolutely.
too.
Right.
Right. So I think that's a good idea to make sure that we know what skills are missing.
And I think also utilizing, well, three things, utilizing technology. I mean, to the time management point, you know, our community board, I love it, but we're straight out of the 18th century. I mean, you know, I think, you know, there's conference calls, there's other things where we could be doing, but I think it would be helpful to have some kind of best practices and hear what other folks are doing to try to deal with that, because people's schedules, as you bring on new board members, you want to bring on people who might have a lot of time, and some people who, you know what, can't sit at 4-hour meetings three times a week.
Maybe there doesn't need to be a 4-hour meeting.
That's another issue, right? And so I think that's one. I think transportation is a big one. I mean,
that's a huge issue.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I consider myself a reasonably smart person, and some of that stuff I'm trying to sort through it. So I think, you know, really figuring some of that stuff out. And I think zoning is going to be a big one with what the mayor's trying to do.
Right.
I mean, you know, beyond ULURP, like zoning, like how does that work, the basics.
Absolutely.
I think that would be very
helpful. The zoning is
helpful.
complicated because I must admit, in Manhattan anyway, we have very little land.
That's right.
And so every piece is worth $1 million.
Right.
And so another question is, do you want to have affordable housing just where there's an up zoning or down zoning? Or do you also want to have it in any as of right? Because you are both dealing with the as of right development, and nobody has to come talk to you at all.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And then all of a sudden you say, what's this building? What's going on here? Now you have some information.
There's no city action, so.
You have good staff, so people say this is going on.
Absolutely.
So again, these are issues that are part of the planning. In other words, should we have more say even with the as of rights? Should there be, you know, more of a mandated affordable housing component even for them? These are all issues that you know the community boards can be part of the discussion of.
I agree.
Go
ahead.
I think that as part of reaching to potential community board members, when I went on the website, just to get a sense of what kind of skill sets were needed, I realized I didn't really have any idea other than the general descriptions of, you know, your passion. I think once a community board is put together, maybe small bios on each of the members,
Great idea.
so that as people look at the website, they can learn who the community board is.
It's a good idea. Oh, now it's just names.
It's
That's
all
right.
just
That's
names,
right.
but we
Good
have
idea.
no
Right.
idea who has what
Who-
skill sets,
right.
you know, and so I think that that would be a way also to sell the community board,
That's a
because
great
you
idea.
you get to know your board.
That's a great idea. So let's talk a little bit about the 16 and 17-year-olds.
Oh,
So you
sure.
should know
Absolutely,
this has been my
that's fabulous.
passion for 12 years. We started out, and people thought I was crazy, to have 16 and 17-year-olds vote in city elections. Well, no adults like that. So I pulled that bill back in the city council, even though I still believe in it. And then we said, okay, community boards, let's try that. So it went through a resolution in the council and passed, and then to the credit of the Assembly and the Senate and the governor, it passed in Albany. It was the last bill to be signed in 2013.
Congratulations.
So it's a big deal.
Congratulations, that is.
So, and we're doing outreach, but I'm just wondering, how do you think we should be doing the training and the outreach to this group of people? I know for sure there are plenty of 16 and 17-year-olds who can do this job. You know, Controller Stringer was on when he was, I don't know if it was legal, but he was on many years ago when he was 16.
Oh, right.
And I think he's done pretty well.
No, he's done all right.
I think he's done okay, right?
Yeah, he's
and
made
so
it.
he was a good appointment.
That's right,
So
that's
I'm sure
right.
there are other Scott Stringers out
there, absolutely.
to take this. So what do you think in terms of training, or how would we, if they're appointed, how would we make sure that they're part of the discussion and so on? I know you're on the youth committee.
Yeah. I've worked with youth in East Harlem for the last 15 to 16 years. One of the things that I find is that they're underestimated. And depending on the neighborhood, there's a vision of what these youth all do. They're either all in gangs or they're all a statistic. So I think that we need to start early with the community boards. I think starting in December is too late. I think that during the summertime, when there's the Summer Youth Employment Program, having a representative of the community board come during their orientations that DYCD does, they do mandatory orientations for a week and some class, having them talk about the community boards, get a sense, having them sign up for more information. This way we can keep in touch with those youth. Once we know what skill sets we need or we're looking for, then we can do targeted trainings where they can come and participate before they're even on a community board. This way you assess their interests. If they show up to the trainings, then you know this guy is at least, or this child, this person, this teenager is looking to be part of this, is being committed.
Got it.
And then once you have that, then time management training. You can also talk to the schools. This can be almost a project for them, a civics project, where they can keep a log of their experiences at school, how they participate in government. And this can be turned in at the end of the semester just for volunteerism credit or for their resume. It speaks to leadership.
Yep.
So, you know, there are a lot of different ways that you can reach out to youth, and you have the most direct hands-on. I'm thinking even further back.
Right. No, I hear you.
Earlier.
Brian, what do you think?
In addition to that, I think there's also the cultural issue, right? I know there are people on my board who don't think 16 and 17-year-olds are seasoned enough,
I heard that all the
capable
time.
enough to be on this board. So I think we also have to deal with that issue. And so I think the first group, particularly on boards like mine, they got to be strong because they have to be strong. It's almost like the Jackie Robinson issue, right? The first coming through. I mean, obviously not on the same scale, but I think because then you have some really strong, sharp young people that will influence people to go, oh, wow. And also if they have particularly unique skills that a community board needs, so that their content will be very strong.
And they're comfortable speaking,
and they're comfortable
in their own skin,
and they're not
going to shying away from expressing an opinion. I think I told you that in Washington Heights we had a forum and 50 young people showed up.
Wow.
Amazing.
And we were so pleased. And part of the Community Board 11, that's Community Board 12, that's who sponsored it. The reason I say that is that there's interest. And the fact of the matter is, I think if we put on 1 or 2 young people, then the others could be a support network.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Because, you know,
That's right.
it's a little intimidating.
That's right.
A
No,
little
that's right.
intimidating.
That's
So they could be part of a support network that would then get information, and their voices could be collectively heard through the young people on the board.
Absolutely.
So those are some, but it is exciting. It's going to be, I think the Jackie Robinson analogy is a good one.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if it doesn't, I've got boards that don't want it.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm going to be like saying, we're going to try this,
That's right.
and you're going to have to work with us, and so on and so forth.
And communication for them is, I mean, it's going to be
Absolutely,
key,
it's key.
because I go to school sometimes, and it's striking how some of the kids just don't communicate strongly and sharply. Maybe, you know, we're seasoned, you're a board president.
Right.
But I think we really got to teach our kids how to communicate well, because they can have great ideas, but if they can't bring that across,
Correct.
Exactly.
you know, they get marginalized.
So then the question would be, where do you see their skills? What kind of skills do you think that they should have? Obviously articulate, obviously leadership, obviously presence. I'm hoping that they can talk about the need for, I don't know, playing fields and sports, and, you know, how you deal with other young people who have challenges. And,
That's right.
You know, and some of them have challenges of their own.
I think youth violence,
Yeah.
at least in my opinion, youth
Yeah.
violence,
Yes.
education, jobs, summer
Yep.
jobs for kids.
Yep.
I mean, we have people who are, you know, well beyond their teens making critical decisions
Yep.
for teens.
We've got to wrap up, which I hate to do, but
Sure.
we're going to have to do that. So our time is up for today's edition of Represent NYC. Our guests today have been community board members Nilsa Arama and Brian Benjamin, and I want to thank both for being here and for their dedicated service on their community boards. I urge everyone who wants to deepen their roots in their neighborhood to consider applying to become a community board member. You can view a community board district map and apply online at manhattanbp.nyc.gov/communityboards. The application deadline is January 30th, 2015, and the 2-year appointments are announced on April 1st. I'm Gale Brewer, Manhattan Borough President, and I thank you very much for joining us on this edition of Represent NYC on Manhattan Neighborhood Network.